The tape doesn't lie, and what it shows is chilling. Play after play, the Browns' offensive line behaves less like protectors and more like bystanders. Defenders rush untouched. Linemen collapse untouched. Sanders absorbs hit after hit, while teammates barely flinch. When former quarterbacks and analysts start using words like criminal to describe these patterns, it's no longer just speculation. This isn't a breakdown in mechanics or preparation. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. It looks deliberate, and in the context of organized sports, few things are more dangerous than deliberate failure masked as poor performance. With each clip, the case against the Browns' offense grows stronger. The line between error and intent is dissolving, leaving Sanders isolated behind a wall that won't block for him. As experts dissect every frame, the NFL faces mounting pressure to confront what may be an unprecedented breach of player trust and team duty. This investigation won't just shape Sanders' future. It could redefine how the league handles internal sabotage, criminal neglect, and toxic organizational cultures. Shedeur Sanders didn't just walk into the NFL as another rookie quarterback. He came in with expectations, legacy, and a target on his back. But what no one anticipated, what no one could have predicted, was that the people putting him in danger weren't on the other side of the field. They were standing next to him, in the huddle, wearing the same uniform. From the first few snaps of the season, something felt off. Not just the usual growing pains that come with transitioning to the league, but plays that broke down before they even started. Pass rushers getting to Sanders untouched. Blitz pickups that looked less like missed assignments and more like no attempt was ever made in the first place. It didn't take long before analysts started pulling tape. And once the tape hit the airwaves, it was undeniable. Linemen standing up after the snap. Some just falling over without contact. Others actively turning their backs, while Sanders was getting blown up in the pocket. Kevin Stefanski, head coach of the Browns, didn't just ignore the warning signs. He defended the very players on tape doing nothing. This isn't just about bad football. This is about intent. The kind of repeated inaction that crosses a line into sabotage. And Stefanski? His press appearances were full of vague praise and excuses, even as the footage told a completely different story. Across multiple games, the patterns got worse. Different matchups. Same results. Shedeur on the ground, offensive linemen upright and unbothered. In one game, 3 defenders blitzed through untouched while the left tackle didn't move a muscle. Not a missed block, literally no block. In another, Sanders was sacked before he could finish a 5-step drop, while both guards appeared to let defenders pass through intentionally. The Browns' offense didn't look disorganized. It looked rehearsed in the worst possible way. These weren't isolated breakdowns. They were systematic. Over and over, defenders ran free. No shifts, no communication, no effort to adjust. Just open doors and a quarterback getting leveled. Go back to the preseason against the Rams. That game should have been the warm-up, the early reps to work out the kinks. Instead, it played out like a live-fire exercise, one that Sanders wasn't protected in. On 1 3rd and long, the entire left side of the offensive line collapsed before contact. Not from strength, not from missed technique. They just fell. Sanders was sacked before the route even developed. Analysts who reviewed the tape said it was one of the worst efforts they'd ever seen, and not from the quarterback, from the line. Former linemen watching the film pointed out how multiple players move in ways that defied basic fundamentals, turning their shoulders, dropping to the ground, looking away from. Against the Raiders, it was déjà vu. This time, the right tackle whiffed 3 consecutive snaps in the red zone. Sanders was hit on each one. No adjustments, no accountability. On the sidelines, the offensive line coach clapped after the drive like nothing happened. And when asked post-game, Stefanski once again praised the unit's effort. It didn't look like effort. It looked like an inside job. That might sound dramatic, but the clips show a line actively disengaging mid-play. Sanders himself looked visibly frustrated. He got up slower. He stopped trusting the pocket. And yet, He kept showing up. After several games of hits that could have been avoided with even basic protection, Sanders was finally sidelined. Officially, it was due to back soreness and precautionary evaluation, but unofficially, it was a boiling point. By then, the calls for investigation had already begun. Multiple former NFL players went public with their concerns, not just about poor blocking, but about the possibility of internal sabotage. One analyst described it as the clearest evidence of betrayal I've seen on a football field. Another used the word criminal, because when you see the same players repeatedly doing nothing and getting praise for it, it starts to look less like bad coaching and more like a coordinated campaign. During a post-game press conference, Stefanski was asked directly about the allegations of intentional sabotage. His answer was deflective. He said the team stands by its preparation and there's no room for conspiracy theories. But he never addressed the tape, never explained the obvious. And then came the kicker. Stefanski praised two linemen that had been highlighted in breakdowns for letting defenders through untouched. One of them had literally turned to watch Sanders get hit on a play that led to turnover. Yet he was singled out for leadership and discipline. It was a surreal moment that told everyone watching, something is seriously wrong here. Eventually, Sanders himself addressed the situation, calmly, professionally, but with unmistakable edge. He didn't call anyone out by name, but when asked if he felt protected, his pause spoke volumes. He thanked the staff for their support, then pivoted the conversation to controlling what you can control. When the NFL announced it was launching an internal review into the Browns' offensive line behavior, fans and media exploded, not because the league was overreacting, but because it had taken this long. The evidence was already out there. Now, the question became what happens next. The spotlight turned harshly onto Stefanski. Under his leadership, the team had rewarded underperformance, silenced concerns, and doubled down on denial. A culture that praises failure doesn't happen by accident. It's built. And if the league's investigation confirms the sabotage, the fallout won't stop at the players. Legal experts began floating the possibility of civil action. If a player can prove his teammates and coaches intentionally endangered him, that crosses into territory the NFL has never dealt with before. The league is no stranger to scandal, but one team sabotaging its own quarterback? That's new ground. As of now, Sanders is recovering. Back injury reports remain vague, but the photos tell a grim story. Ice packs, limited movement, and a young player paying a price for something he never signed up for. And still, not a single public reprimand from a Browns front office. The NFL has a decision to make, not just about the Browns, but about what kind of league it wants to be. Because if this goes unpunished, if deliberate neglect is allowed to stand, then every player is at risk. Every locker room becomes a gamble. And the message to every young quarterback becomes, trust no one. The NFL has seen controversy, but this one is different. It's not about what an opponent did. It's not about a blown call. It's about a team apparently turning on its own quarterback. Over the past few weeks, video after video has surfaced showing the Cleveland Browns offensive line doing the unthinkable, standing down, stepping aside, or just flat out falling down while Shedeur Sanders gets hit. These aren't random clips taken out of context. They're part of a growing body of evidence showing that the Browns' offensive line may be deliberately sabotaging its own rookie quarterback. Analysts have called it coordinated. Others have called it criminal. What's clear is that something isn't right, and now the NFL has launched an internal... Sanders hasn't said much. He's kept it professional. But on the field, his body tells a story. The kid has taken unnecessary hits week after week, not from aggressive blitzes or freak plays, but from protection that simply isn't there. In play after play, defenders rush through the line untouched while linemen barely move. And this isn't about a quarterback holding the ball too long. The breakdowns happen fast, often before Sanders can even set his feet. Offensive linemen are seen turning their backs, standing straight up, or hitting the turf without any resistance. The hits are brutal. The protection is non-existent. This started early. During the preseason, the signs were already there. In one drive against a second-string defensive line, the Browns' offensive front allowed back-to-back pressures without any adjustment. On one snap, the guard drops to the ground like he slipped on purpose. Sanders took a hard sack on that play. People wrote it off at the time as rust or inexperience. But with the regular season underway, the patterns didn't just continue. They got worse. By the third game, tape reviewers were publicly questioning whether the line was purposely letting Sanders take damage. By the fifth game, those questions turned into full-blown accusations. Throughout it all, Kevin Stefanski, the Browns' head coach, never changed his tone. He continued to defend the offensive line in post-game interviews. Even when the visuals showed linemen standing still while defenders ran past, Stefanski praised their discipline. That only made things more suspicious. Analysts started asking why the coach was defending such obviously poor play. Was it incompetence? Blind loyalty? Or was he complicit in whatever was going on behind the scenes? Because if the tape was showing repeated, blatant protection failures, and the coach was still calling it effort, something didn't add up. During the matchup against the Dolphins, the Browns line had its worst showing yet. For different defenders recorded sacks without being touched. One of them came off the edge untouched while the tackle stood upright and didn't even reach. On another play, both guards dropped to ground immediately, leaving Sanders to get slammed up the middle. Commentators watching the replay didn't hold back. They said what everyone was thinking. This isn't just bad football. This looks like sabotage. It wasn't just one game. This happened in multiple matchups. Against the Patriots, against the Rams, against the Raiders. Every time Sanders stepped onto the field, it was open season. And it wasn't because the opponents were elite pass rushers. It was because no one was trying to stop them. Patterns emerged. The same players failing over and over. The same assignments ignored. The same bizarre technique. Turning away from contact. Falling early. Watching instead of blocking. It wasn't subtle. It was consistent. And when the Browns faced the Patriots, it reached a tipping point. Two linemen were caught on tape high-fiving after Sanders was sacked. That moment went viral. The Browns tried to brush it off, claiming it was misinterpreted. But the internet wasn't buying it. Neither were analysts. Stefanski continued to defend his players. He repeated phrases like trust the process and not every play goes how you want it. But those weren't explanations. They were deflections. At a certain point, when the tape keeps showing the same thing, deflection turns into denial. When Sanders was asked about it, his answer was careful but telling. He said he trusts the process, but he's also learning a lot about how the league works. That one sentence hit differently. It wasn't just about football. It was about politics, loyalty, culture. He didn't name names. He didn't throw anyone under the bus. But his tone made it clear he knows something is wrong. He just can't say it directly. Not yet. Not until someone else steps in. And that someone turned out to be the NFL itself. Against the Ravens, the chaos reached a new level. The Browns gave up 5 sacks in the first half. 2 came on identical plays, no motion, no protection shifts, and absolutely no blocking. After the second, Sanders stayed down for several seconds. Trainers came out. The broadcast cut to commercial. Stefanski's post-game comments didn't change. He said the offensive line did their jobs. But at this point, no one was buying it. The videos were everywhere. The breakdowns were obvious. And now, the conversation shifted from coaching to criminality. Was this just bad leadership? Or was it something much? Sanders is still showing up to practice. He's still putting in the work. But the hits have taken a toll. His posture is different. The way he moves is more cautious. You can tell he's bracing for contact before the snap. That's not how a quarterback is supposed to play. And while he keeps showing up, others are starting to ask the hard questions. Is he safe? Not from defenders, but from his own team? How does a rookie develop under these conditions? And more importantly, how does the league justify letting it continue? Shedeur Sanders has stayed quiet about specifics, but his performance under pressure speaks volumes. Every week, he shows up to compete. He scrambles, absorbs hits, gets up, and keeps playing. And somehow, despite the environment around him, he's still producing, still trying. But even the most resilient players have limits. The mental toll of knowing you're not being protected by the people who are supposed to have your back, that's the kind of betrayal that changes careers. Sanders is operating under the kind of pressure that isn't just offensive, it's emotional. And still, he's not pointing fingers. That silence is louder than words. Game after game, it's the same story. The match against the Bengals? Another disaster. One blitz pickup missed entirely, and both tackles stood straight up, allowing edge rushers to tee off on Sanders without a hand on them. Against the Lions, it was worse. Sanders was hit 6 times in the first quarter alone, and not a single lineman looked back to check on him. And there's no hiding it anymore. Film reviewers from across the league, former players, commentators, even ex-coaches, have come forward to say the same thing. This doesn't look like bad coaching. It doesn't even look like quitting. It looks like intent. Like something is happening behind the scenes that no one wants to admit. Against the Lions, Kevin Stefanski was caught on camera yelling at Sanders on the sideline after yet another blown protection. The context? Sanders had just taken his 3rd blindside hit in 2 drives. Stefanski didn't go after the lineman. He didn't question the blocking schemes. He went straight for the quarterback. That moment didn't sit well with viewers. Why yell at the guy getting hit? Why not the ones letting it happen? It painted a clear picture of where the blame was being shifted, and it made Stefanski look less like a coach trying to fix things and more like one protecting the people enabling the damage. When the Browns played the Titans, the same issues flared up. A key 3rd down saw Sanders get rushed by 2 defenders unblocked. The guard and tackle on the right side didn't touch anyone, didn't even attempt to. On the replay, both appeared to just stand up and watch. After that hit, Sanders clutched his back and limped to the sideline. Trainers rushed over. But what stood out most was the body language of the offensive line. No concern, no reaction, no urgency. Just 5 players walking back to the huddle like nothing happened. It didn't feel like miscommunication. It felt like indifference. Then came the matchup against the 49ers, one of the most watched games of the season. And this time, everyone was watching closely. What they saw confirmed every suspicion. Sanders was hit 8 times in the first half. 2 of those hits came as both tackles pulled in opposite directions, leaving the edge completely open. Analysts called it scheme malpractice, but others said it looked like it was drawn up to fail. It's rare for so many breakdowns to happen in such identical ways. And when one player messes up repeatedly, it's a problem. But when 5 players do it in sync, it's a plan. Kevin Stefanski has stuck to the same talking points in every press conference. We trust our guys. The tape doesn't always tell the whole story. We're making adjustments. But the numbers don't lie. And the footage absolutely does tell the story. At some point, loyalty turns into willful ignorance, especially when the coach is praising linemen who are actively putting his quarterback in danger. The fact that there haven't been benchings or lineup changes only fuels the theory that this isn't just about football mistakes. It's about a deeper issue inside the locker room. During one of the earliest preseason pressers, Sanders mentioned something that now seems prophetic. When asked about the transition to the NFL, he said, "You learn quickly who's really got your back." At the time, it felt like a general comment about professionalism. Now it feels like a warning. He knew, maybe not everything, but enough to realize that the atmosphere around him wasn't normal, that the support he expected wasn't going to come from everyone on the field. It makes you wonder, how long has he been dealing with this? And why hasn't anyone stepped in sooner? Now that the NFL is officially investigating, things are getting serious. Sanders addressed the probe briefly in his latest press conference. He kept it respectful, but you could tell he was choosing his words carefully. "I just want to play ball. I'm here to do my job. Whatever's going on, that's not my focus." It was a masterclass in restraint, but also a clear indicator that something is happening. A player doesn't say those things unless there's real tension behind the scenes. He's not throwing teammates under the bus, but he's also not pretending things are fine. That subtle distancing, that's all you need to know. Stefanski isn't the only one under the microscope. GM Andrew Barry has avoided the spotlight, but that won't last. If this culture dysfunction stretches into front office, if they knew and did nothing, the fallout could be massive. League sources are reportedly asking questions about who signed off on praising linemen with the worst pass-blocking grades in the league. Barry and Stefanski are tied together on this. If the league finds internal memos, communications, or staff testimony supporting the sabotage theory, both could be out, and not just out, banned. Because putting a player in harm's way for internal politics or performance manipulation isn't just unethical, it's illegal. As the clips continue to circulate, fan support for Sanders is growing. People can see it now. This isn't just about a struggling rookie or a bad offensive line. This is about a young quarterback trying to survive in an environment that seems designed to break him. He's been hit more times than any other rookie quarterback in the league. And the worst part? Half those hits could have been prevented with basic protection. Not elite blocking, just average effort. But effort is the one thing consistently missing from the players around him. And now the question shifts. What happens if the NFL confirms sabotage? What does accountability look like in a case like this? Suspensions? Fines? Lawsuits? Because if one team is caught putting its own quarterback at risk, it forces a league to confront a whole new kind of scandal. This isn't just a Browns problem anymore. It's a league-wide problem. Every team has to look inward. Every rookie has to wonder what kind of culture they're walking into. Because if the allegations are true, the entire idea of team breaks down, and the trust that holds a locker room together, gone. There's still a chance of the league to act decisively, to make an example, to protect the players who trust the system to have their backs. But that only happens if they follow through, thoroughly, transparently, and without playing favorites. Sanders has already taken enough hits. Now it's time to protect him the way his own line wouldn't. If you want more deep dives into stories like this, breakdowns that cut through the noise and get to the real drama, hit that like button, drop a comment, and make sure you're subscribed. Because trust, the saga isn't over. Not even close.